Today we're still discussing the impermanence of life. This time, regardless of the practice guidance I am teaching, be it impermanence or another topic, I explain it in greater detail, supported by scriptural evidence and examples. In my opinion, a Dharma teacher should provide thorough explanations of the text during their teachings. However, some people believe that Buddhist books or teachings should be succinct. Someone once told me, "You'd better not translate lengthy works or write long books, as they may discourage readers. You should provide concise teachings, otherwise listeners may lose interest." In my view, the Dharma is as vast and profound as the ocean. What you've received is not even 1/10,000,000th of a drop in that ocean. Therefore, it may not seem entirely reasonable if you feel the teaching is too lengthy and extensive. Is the topic were some worldly matter of little significance, then we should indeed refrain from spending too much time on it. But if it is the Dharma, which offers only benefit and no harm, and provides us the path to liberation from samsara, we should dedicate as much time as possible to it. In fact, relatively speaking, I don't cover too much in my teachings because I consider that people today are often too busy to invest a lot of time and energy in the Dharma. In the past, Master Chengguan, Qingliang of Chinese Buddhism would teach for 8 hours a day. Currently, some eminent masters in India and America teach 4 hours in the morning and 4 in the afternoon. Moreover, Khenpo Tarsar of Tibetan Buddhism incorporated abundant scriptural evidence and reasoning in his teachings. He could speak non-stop from morning to afternoon without a break for lunch. Eventually, many of his disciples could no longer endure it. I'm not teaching in the same manner. On one hand, I do not quote scriptural evidence or use extensive reasoning like those eminent masters. On the other hand, even if I did, there may not be many people willing to listen to lengthy teachings. Nevertheless, I still believe that Dharma teachings should be rich in content, and the duration of a class shouldn't be too short. Many busy people may not agree with this perspective, but Dharma teachers shouldn't cater to their preferences. If teachers merely conform to their likes and dislikes, following others in their greed when they are greedy, or in their anger when they are angry, this is not true conformity from a Buddhist perspective. True conformity is to teach in accordance with a recipient's capacity and level of understanding. As Dharma students, we should strive to study and comprehend the teachings, whether they are extensive or brief. In the last class, we studied the uncertainty of the circumstances of death and part of intense awareness of impermanence. However, simply meditating on death will not suffice. We also need to understand what can truly benefit us when death approaches. The only thing of any use at the moment of death is the Dharma, which not only alleviates the fear and suffering associated with death, but also provides immense significance for entering the path of liberation in many lives yet to come. In the cycles of samsara, the only thing that can accompany us is the Dharma. All other things, including children, wealth, fame, status, and glory, must be left behind when we die. As Shantideva says, "And when the heralds of the deadly king have gripped me, what help to me will be my friends and kin? For them life's virtue is my one defense, and this, alas, is what I shrugged away. Therefore, while we are still alive, we must practice Dharma and accumulate merit. Otherwise, we will deeply regret it at the moment of death." Sakya Pandita says in the Treasury of Good Advice, "Not knowing where to go after death, at this time, those who have accumulated no virtues are pitiful." Sometimes I reflect on myself. Although I've engaged in some practices, I don't feel as certain about my fate after death as past great masters did about theirs. All of you should also ask yourselves, have you practiced diligently in this life? If you haven't, it would be a great pity to leave this world in such a state. In the past, many Mahayana practitioners would practice the Dharma until their last breath. These days, let alone lay practitioners, even some renowned monastics don't spend much time on practice, so we must always maintain correct understanding and mindfulness, fully recognizing that all mundane affairs of samsara are impermanent and devoid of intrinsic substance. We should continually urge ourselves to practice the Dharma. Longchen Nyingtik says, in the precious treasury of pith instructions, you will die before completing all you wish to do in this life. One thing leads to another, like the waves of the ocean. Come to thoroughly appreciate that nothing you undertake will be useful when you die. From today on, practice to attain enlightenment, which brings liberation. Not to mention the profound teachings on the middle way and Vajrayana. Even the concept of impermanence is difficult for many people to accept, let alone put into practice. If a person develops conviction about impermanence, they may feel that worldly life lacks any real meaning, and that the only thing of significance is Dharma practice. After studying the precious garland of mountain practices and opening the door to the Dharma, many of you developed strong renunciation and became motivated to attain liberation, thus becoming true practitioners. Otherwise, even if you've received a certificate for taking refuge or bodhicitta vows, if your mind remains unchanged, the certificate carries little weight. In essence, the temporary combination of body and mind is impermanent. Therefore, do not cling to this illusory body as the self. In this world, many things that people cling to are in fact not worth holding on to. Take, for example, the I, to which everyone is tightly attached. If we investigate the I using the middle way reasoning, or through the Guru's pith instruction, we will realize that the conjunction of the five aggregates is also governed by the principle of impermanence, so we need not cling to it. There is a story called The Traveler and the Ghosts. In the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom, a man had been given a mission, whereby he was compelled to travel a great distance. He spent the night alone in a vacant dwelling. In the middle of the night, a ghost carried in a man's corpse and laid it down in front of him. Then another ghost who had chased along behind angrily castigated the first ghost, yelling, "This corpse is mine. Why did you carry it in here?" The first ghost said, "It belongs to me. I carried it in here myself." The second ghost retorted, "The fact of the matter is, I am the one who carried this corpse in here." Then each of the ghosts grabbed one hand of the corpse and tried to pull the body away from the other. Then the first ghost said, "There's a man here. We can ask him to settle this." The ghost who had come in later then asked the traveler, "Well, who was it who carried this corpse in here?" The traveler thought to himself, "Both of these ghosts are very strong. If I report the facts, I'm bound to die. If I lie, I'm also bound to die. Therefore, since I can't avoid being killed in either case, what's the point in lying about it?" And so, he replied, "It was the first ghost who carried in the corpse." The second ghost flew into a rage, grabbed one of the man's hands, tore his limb off, and threw it down on the ground. At this, the first ghost pulled one of the arms from the corpse and attached it to the man as a replacement. They then proceeded in this fashion with both arms, both feet, the head, the two sides, and so forth, until the traveler's entire body had been switched. The two ghosts then proceeded to devour the body that they had gotten from the exchange. When they had finished, they wiped their mouths and departed. At that point, the traveler thought to himself, "With my very own eyes, I saw those two ghosts entirely devour the body born of my mother. This body, which I now have here, is composed entirely of someone else's flesh. Do I really still have a body now, or is it the case that I have no body at all? If I hold the view that I do indeed have a body, that body is actually somebody else's entirely. If I hold that I don't have one, still, There is a body here right now. He continued to ponder like this until his mind became so confused and distressed that he became like a man gone mad. The next morning, he went off down the road. When he reached the neighboring country, he saw there a Buddha stupa and a group of monks. He couldn't talk about anything else. He could only keep asking whether his body was existent or non-existent. The bhikkhus asked him, "Just who are you anyway?" The traveler replied, "Well, as for me, I don't know myself whether I'm a person or a non-person." He then described in detail the events that had transpired. The bhikkhus said, "This man has a natural understanding of the non-existence of a self. He could easily gain deliverance." And so they offered an explanation, saying, "From its origin on up until the present, your body has always naturally been devoid of a self. It's not something that just happened now. It is merely on account of an aggregation of the four great elements that one conceives of it as my body. In this respect, your original body and this one you now have are no different." Thus, the bhikkhus precipitated the traveler's deliverance to the path, whereupon he cut off all afflictions and immediately realized arhatship. Therefore, by examining our own bodies carefully, we'll realize they are not different from the corpses in a cemetery. However, due to our defilements since beginningless time, each of us mistakenly regards them as I. This ignorance leads to negative actions and causes us great suffering, which is truly not worth it. Thus, through such investigation, we should understand that the five aggregates are not the I. Additionally, we should meditate on impermanence in whatever we are doing during our daily lives, whether walking, sitting, resting, or lying down. So how exactly should we practice impermanence in our everyday lives? Here are a few examples. Walking. All roads and paths are impermanent, so every action and movement you make should align with the Dharma. As you walk, reflect on the impermanence of the road. From a coarse perspective, the road will eventually be destroyed, perhaps in a disaster. From a more subtle perspective, it is constantly changing in every moment. Similarly, your body is also impermanent, and you may not have the chance to walk the same road again in the future. Therefore, ensure that you act in accordance with the Dharma and always guide yourself with mindfulness and vigilance. As it says in the condensed transcendent wisdom, if you walk merely gazing at a yoke's length ahead of you, your mind will remain undisturbed. Worldly people often feel a sense of impermanence only when they lose a loved one, lamenting that they can no longer see that cherished person. Practitioners should regard any departure as a farewell forever, even if both parties are in good health, thinking, we may never see each other again in this life, so let's meet in the blissful land. Contemplating impermanence at all times is crucial. While worldly people may view this mindset as inauspicious, it is in fact essential. It is important for us practitioners to cultivate a deep understanding of impermanence among ourselves as a subtle dependent origination. Places, wherever you are, all places are impermanent, so contemplate them as pure Buddha fields. Therefore, no place is worth clinging to. Ultimately, the Saha world, where Buddha Shakyamuni appeared and instructed us living beings, is a pure realm, as Brahma Sikhin told Sariputra in the Vimalakirti Sutra. We should regard all places as pure Buddha fields, rather than as messy, filthy, or inferior locations. Many people who lack good practice may perceive this world as a garbage dump and view other beings as demons and ghosts. Such perceptions can greatly harm their practice. Food and drink. Food, drink, and whatever you enjoy are impermanent, so savor the nourishment of meditative concentration. When the Venerable Milarepa was practicing asceticism through fasting in a mountain hermitage, many dakinis appeared to offer him food and clothing. They said, "Venerable One, while you are practicing, if you eat a bit of worldly food and wear an item of clothing, and also accept delicious offerings from us dakinis. This will greatly aid your meditation and other virtuous deeds. We will provide food and clothing for you." Milarepa replied, "All worldly provisions pale in comparison to a practitioner's experience and realization. I partake in the food of my meditative concentration, so it does not matter whether I have worldly food, drink, or other pleasures." It would be ideal if we could attain such a state of realization. Even if we do not, we should still consume food free of contamination and guilt and avoid negative actions. I have emphasized that our daily meals must not involve killing. Someone might eat a frog dish in the morning, a snake dish at noon, and a chicken dish at night. Particularly those who live by the sea consume not just one or two living beings, but a significant number at every meal. Such diners are crueler than butchers and more terrible than demons. Therefore, we should strive to adopt a vegetarian diet. Additionally, we should offer to the 3 jewels at each meal or observe the precept of not eating after midday, so we can lead a pure life with a pure mind. Sleep is impermanent, so while you are asleep, purify sleep's delusions into the state of luminosity. It is meaningless to fall asleep in greed and ignorance. Even a dream is a form of delusion. However, if you have attained the states of generation stage and completion stage, you can transform sleep's delusions into clear light, the state of luminosity. Even if you haven't reached these states, you should visualize light rays radiating from the Buddha, shining upon you and your surroundings, and then sleep in that state. Wealth. Wealth, if you have it, is impermanent, so rely on the 7 treasures of the noble ones, including faith, morality, learning, generosity, self-respect, respect for others, and wisdom. Worldly people place great importance on wealth. Recently, some lay practitioners from Taiwan attended a consecration ceremony at a Tibetan monastery. A Tibetan woman I know was also present. Her entire body was adorned with gold jewelry, gold rings on all 10 fingers, and several gold necklaces around her neck. The Taiwanese lay practitioners considered her extravagance to be truly wasteful. To be honest, her appearance was rather unappealing and lacked elegance. An ordinary person may view wealth as a status symbol, thinking that high-end clothing, luxury cars, and expensive houses are signs of success. In contrast, good practitioners with advanced levels of practice regard wealth as no more than dirt and don't take it seriously at all. They value only the 7 treasures of the noble ones. Of course, it can be quite challenging if a practitioner is a complete maverick and doesn't conform to worldly norms. Nevertheless, regardless of your situation, make sure to prioritize the 7 treasures of the noble ones. Loved ones. Loved ones, friends and family are impermanent, so there's little point in spending all day with them. We should avoid crowded places and dwell in solitude to cultivate the spirit of renunciation. In doing so, you will naturally begin to cherish your time. In fact, it is crucial to value time. If you don't take the time to practice properly, you may not have such an opportunity again. Chan Master Yiyuan of the Ming Dynasty said, "To return early to the Western land, we must recognize that our impermanent life is measured in breaths, so we must cherish this limited time. If this life is wasted, it will be difficult for us to attain liberation. Understanding this will inspire renunciation, as we realize that this human life is so precious that we must make the most of it." Some novice monks or nuns have begun to cultivate renunciation, but this commitment must be sustained continually. Otherwise, such renunciation may simply be an impulse that won't endure. High rank and celebrity. High rank and celebrity are impermanent, so always maintain a lowly position. A true practitioner does not seek fame or status and can always remain humble. Some people lead exhausting lives, constantly scheming for something insignificant, such as trivial status. How utterly meaningless. Of course, if this status can help them benefit others, it is fine to have it. But if it brings no benefit to others, they should emulate the Kadampa Geshis of the past, who, despite possessing immeasurable inner qualities, remained unknown to others and conducted virtuous deeds simply as ordinary individuals. Speech and conversation are impermanent, so idle talk is meaningless. Urge yourself to recite mantras and prayers. The precious treasury of Pith instructions lists 6 mistakes that a practitioner should avoid, such as trying to please family and friends while neglecting the guru, engaging in idle talk instead of recitation and mantra repetition, and pursuing worldly goals rather than the authentic Dharma. Some people these days complain they feel exhausted after reciting the Padmasambhava mantra just 10,000 times, saying, "My head is about to burst after 1 hour of mantra repetition." Yet, when they engage in conversation, especially about others' faults, they feel as though 3 or 4 hours pass too quickly, and they are even willing to stay up late to chat longer. Ordinary people are indeed burdened with afflictions. When performing virtuous deeds, they feel as if they are climbing a challenging mountain. They constantly check the time, hoping it will end sooner. After 30 minutes of prostrations or an hour of mantra repetition, they feel fatigued, but when dealing with worldly trivialities, they are full of energy. It's a complete reversal of priorities. Therefore, we need perseverance and diligence while practicing the Dharma. As for unwholesome deeds, we must strive to refrain from them. Virtuous thoughts. Faith and renunciation are impermanent, so strive diligently to make your commitments unshakable. At times, you may think, "I won't go home anymore. I won't live a worldly life any longer." However, after a while, this thought may completely fade away. Therefore, to maintain your steadfast renunciation and faith, you must consistently pray to the Guru and the 3 jewels and guard your mind with unwavering aspirations and determination. Discursive thoughts. Thoughts and delusions are impermanent, so work on developing a virtuous and noble character. Many people, especially certain academic scholars, tend to engage in discursive thinking. These critical thinkers often identify problems, believing that this is not right and that is wrong. However, their thoughts are also impermanent. The key is to cultivate bodhicitta, compassion, and a good nature. Otherwise, no matter how eloquent and creative you are, you may fail to bring benefit to yourself and others. Meditative experiences. In the course of our practice, we sometimes have auspicious dreams at night and direct visions of light or deities during the day. However, these meditative experiences and realizations are impermanent as well, so there is no need to become overly joyful. Typically, you may not even notice that you have strong afflictions, but once you develop some meditative experience or attain a realization, you might start proclaiming, "I've attained realization. I have a direct vision of so-and-so." In truth, your direct vision is not what matters most. What truly counts is the transformation of your mind. If you consistently practice the common preliminaries, such as meditating on the rarity of human life and the impermanence of life, and eventually cultivate deep conviction, you will be much more adept when applying the higher teachings. Otherwise, your meditative experiences and realizations will be fleeting and unstable. The Kadampa master La Droi Gompo, 1186 to 1259, said, "If the conviction in the impermanence of life hasn't arisen in your mind, even the tantric teachings are not profound to you. If the thought of death arises in your mind, even the prayer on the 3 refuges is very profound." Indeed, without a solid foundation, even if you seem to have perceived the bindu, essence drop, or received the highest tantric teachings, such as Lama Yangtik, the innermost heartdrop of Guru. It is akin to building a beautiful house on ice. The meditative experience simply will not endure. If you haven't practiced impermanence well, your state will be short-lived and can easily be undermined by delusions. Therefore, a true practitioner must establish a solid foundation, which I have emphasized repeatedly, and I hope you will always keep this in mind. It is not that I am withholding the tantric teachings from you or unwilling to share them. In fact, from a pedagogical perspective, teaching tantras is not difficult. For example, it may take me a week or a month to explain the practical guide to Lama Nyingtik. I should be able to teach you tantric texts. However, if you haven't completed ngondro, you cannot attain the corresponding state. And even if you do, that state will not endure. Therefore, you must first practice ngondro thoroughly before proceeding to the practice of higher teachings. Only in this way can you succeed in your practice. Otherwise, given the unique differences in each person's channels, energies, and essences, some of you may temporarily experience certain meditative experiences in the early stages of your practice, but these experiences still belong to the path stages and can easily fade away. In any case, you need not cling to them. What you must pursue are the meditative experiences of the third stages. That is, you reach the point where everything dissolves in the nature of reality, the fourth vision of Dzogchen, the great perfection. At that time, you have already transcended birth and death, fully mastering both. With the ability to freely control the process of dying, you attain the indestructible realm of deathlessness. Like an eagle soaring in the sky, there is no fear when death arrives. From then on, there is no need for further practice. In fact, the Chan school offers similar guidance. Recently, I listened to some audio teachings from Chan Master Guo, who repeatedly emphasized that reciting mantras and prayers alone cannot completely uproot samsara. According to him, to go beyond life and death, one must recognize the nature of mind through meditating on who is reciting the name of the Buddha. What Master Guo said is essentially the same as what Dagpo Rinpoche expressed in this text. When we reach the point where everything dissolves into the nature of reality, we recognize the nature of mind, and we will seize the citadel of immortality, just as Milarepa, Longchenpa, and other great accomplished masters did. Consequently, we will no longer fear death, and we can even enter the Buddha field without abandoning the physical body. Of course, ordinary people do fear death. Aryadeva states in the 400 stanzas on the middle way, "When there is no end at all to this ocean of suffering, why are you childish people not afraid of drowning in it?" As Milarepa sang, "At first, fearing death, I fled to the mountains. Again and again, I meditated on the uncertainty of death. Having realized the indestructible ground of deathlessness, I am now free from the fear of death." Milarepa had committed many wrongdoings, and he worried that he would die before purifying his negative karma, which would lead him to fall into a lower realm. Therefore, he went to a solitary place, followed the pith instructions received from Marpa, and repeatedly meditated on the impermanence of life. In the end, Milarepa attained the citadel of immortality and transcended all fear of dying. This is also true for many Dharma practitioners. When reflecting on their past wrongdoings, they often feel anxious about what will happen after death, prompting them to enter Buddhism and practice with single-minded dedication. At a certain point, even if they have not attained the same realization as the eminent masters of the past, they at least recognize that had they not studied the Dharma, they would not have ceased their wrongdoing. Now, they refrain from committing severe wrongdoings and devote themselves to the Dharma for the rest of their lives, adopting a simple and pure lifestyle. As a result, they can face death with greater confidence and no longer fear it as they once did. It is commendable that many lay practitioners have completely transformed their lives and lifestyles through studying the Dharma. Regardless of how worldly people perceive you, as a practitioner, you should consider making some changes. Many Dharma students at Larangar express that they carry heavy karmic debts that hinder their practice. However, compared to the past, even if you are not practicing well, at least you are no longer engaging in severe wrongdoings, which is worth acknowledging. Otherwise, if you have not abandoned your previous lifestyle, you may be inching closer to the hell realm with each passing moment. Some people used to eat seafood daily. They even consumed fish alive, with their teeth stained with blood. Yet, they did not perceive their actions as terrible or cruel. Now, through learning the teachings of compassion in the Dharma, many have come to acknowledge their past wrongdoings, which is a significant step forward. A few days ago, someone handed me a letter saying, "After studying the way of the Bodhisattva, I feel enormous gratitude towards you." He expressed his thanks multiple times, filling a large piece of paper. In truth, you do not need to thank me. However, you should indeed be grateful for Mayahanya teachings, such as the way of the Bodhisattva, because they have transformed our lives in ways that cannot be measured by wealth or status. Through our practice of impermanence, we should strive to attain the citadel of immortality, as Milarepa did. This is also the practice that the Buddha engaged in during his causal stage. The Mahaparinirvana Sutra states, in the past, when the Buddha was a Brahmin, he was engaging in bodhicitta activities on a snowy mountain. At that time, neither the Buddha nor the Dharma existed. To test the Brahmin's determination, Indra transformed into a horrific Rakshasa, a demonic being, and approached him, reciting a half stanza, "Impermanent, alas are conditioned things, their very nature is to arise and vanish." Upon hearing this, the Brahmin felt that this half stanza pointed to the right path for Buddhas of the past, present, and future, so he pleaded with the Rakshasa to reveal the second half. The Rakshasa refused unless the Brahmin offered his blood and flesh. The Brahmin gladly agreed, and the Rakshasa continued. Having arisen, they then cease. Their subsiding is blissful. The Brahmin was overjoyed and wrote this stanza on rocks and trees, hoping it would be noticed by others. This stanza encompasses the essence of all phenomena. Some Dharma practitioners often put no-talk posters on the pillars of the Dharma hall. You need not do this. If you truly wish to post something on the pillars, you may display this stanza instead. Then, to fulfill his promise to the Rakshasa, the Brahmin climbed a tall tree and jumped off. At that moment, melodious music filled the sky, and Indra returned to his original form and caught the Brahmin. Indra then repented, prostrated before the Brahmin, praised him, and returned to the celestial realm. This story is also recounted in The White Lotus, the great biography of Buddha Shakyamuni, and other Jataka tales. As you can see, the principle of impermanence is the true gateway to liberation, making it essential to seek out this teaching. Regarding the practice of impermanence, the peerless Dagpo Rinpoche said, "At first, you should be driven by a fear of birth and death, fleeing without hesitation, like a stag escaping from a trap. In the middle, you should have no regrets, even if you die, like a farmer who has tirelessly cultivated his fields. In the end, you should feel relieved and at ease, like a person who has just accomplished a great task. During the practice of impermanence, at first, we should be like a stag escaping from a hunter's trap, without looking back. When a person begins to understand impermanence, they may immediately forego everything and insist on becoming a monk to devote themselves to the Dharma. Once they have made up their mind, nobody can dissuade them. Whatever happens, whether their mother faints or their father is furious, cannot change their resolve. This is beneficial because without such renunciation, There is no way for them to disentangle themselves from worldly trivialities. In the middle, we should practice diligently, like a farmer carefully tending to his fields, until we gain the confidence that we won't experience a bad rebirth after death. This way, we will have no regrets even if we die. In the end, having completed all our practices, we feel relieved and happy. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche states in his A Yogi Song of Happiness, "In life, I am joyful because I serve the teachings and beings. In death, I shall be joyful too, as I shall surely go to a pure land. So whatever karmic experiences arise, whether positive or negative, I have let go of mental agitation based on hopes and fears." While in exile around the region of Gyalmo Tsawarong, Vairutsana composed the Song of Content and Happiness, which reflected similar themes. Happiness is defined very differently between a worldly person and a practitioner. I read a book titled I Am a Happy Person, which presents many examples of worldly happiness that lack true meaning. These forms of happiness are neither the happiness derived from Dharma practice, nor the great bliss beyond life and death. The peerless Dagpo Rinpoche also says, "At first, you should recognize that there is no time to waste, like someone dangerously wounded by an arrow. In the middle, you should meditate on death with single-minded focus, like a mother whose only child has died. In the end, you should realize that there is nothing left to do, like a shepherd whose flocks have been driven off by his enemies. In the course of practicing impermanence, we should initially be like someone dangerously wounded by an arrow, setting aside all other matters, no matter how important they may seem, and focusing solely on emergency medical treatment. Similarly, when we first develop the view of impermanence, we care about nothing but practicing the Dharma, and nothing can deter us from our practice. In the middle, we should meditate on death without thinking of anything else, like a mother whose only child has died, so that all she thinks about day and night is her child and nothing else. In the end, you attain the ultimate fruition that is beyond any fabrication and effort. At this stage, all phenomena are clearly and thoroughly understood, yet they cannot be expressed in words. You are like a shepherd whose flocks have been driven off by his enemies, dumbfounded and unsure of what to do. Of course, this state is not the sadness that a shepherd might feel after losing his flocks. Here, the focus is primarily on the indescribable nature of this state, which is unaffected by any effort. The peerless Dagpo Rinpoche suggests that one should meditate single-mindedly on death and impermanence until one reaches that stage. Puchungwa Geltsen said, "If one doesn't meditate on death in the morning, then one spends the day in vain. If one doesn't meditate on death in the evening, then one spends the night in vain." Another great practitioner said, "If the thought of impermanence doesn't arise in the morning, then at noon, the desire for this life will surface. If the thought of impermanence doesn't arise in the afternoon, then at night, the desire for this life will take over your mind." During the evening assembly in temples of Chinese Buddhism, the Sangha chants a verse that says, "This day is already done. Our lives are that much shorter. We're like fish in a shrinking pond. What joy is there in this?" Therefore, we should always urge ourselves to meditate on death and impermanence, supported by scriptural evidence and Buddhist stories. By doing so, over time, it becomes easier for us to attain conviction about impermanence. The Buddha said, "By meditating on impermanence persistently, one makes offerings to all the Buddhas. By meditating on impermanence persistently, one receives comfort from the Buddhas. By meditating on impermanence persistently, one receives prophecies from the Buddhas. By meditating on impermanence persistently, one receives blessings from the Buddhas. Among all footprints, the elephant's is the greatest. Among all practices in the Buddha's teachings, meditation on impermanence is unparalleled." It also says in the Nirvana Sutra, just as among the footprints of all living beings, there is nothing that surpasses the footprint of an elephant, so too is the concept of impermanence paramount among all concepts. Why are the elephant's footprints the best of all? Some masters explain that the elephant's footprint is round and majestic, while other animals have incomplete footprints. Other masters suggest that the elephant can avoid dangerous trails and only walk safe paths. So if we follow the elephant's footprints, we can steer clear of dangers and arrive safe and sound. Similarly, of all the meditations, the practice of impermanence is the most supreme. Some people have too many discursive thoughts. They think about this and that, here and there. Their minds can hardly remain calm and focused, which truly distresses them. In fact, if you enjoy thinking, you'd better contemplate impermanence. The mountains are impermanent, the rivers are impermanent, I am impermanent, and you are impermanent. In the end, I will die, and so will you. There is no instruction more supreme than this one. The great Pure Land Master Yingguang had a statue of Buddha Amitabha on his shrine table, and on the wall behind the statue was a piece of paper with a large Chinese character for death. When we reflect on our mortality, what else is worth clinging to? And what can we bring with us at the moment of death? Thus, many eminent masters place great importance on the practice of impermanence, which is why their practice has been so effective and powerful. As stated in the Vinaya, to contemplate the impermanence of all compounded phenomena for even a single moment is greater than giving food and offerings to 100 of my disciples, who are perfect vessels, such as the Bhikkhu Sariputra and Maudgalyayan. Of all the disciples of Buddha Shakyamuni, Sariputra and Maudgalyayana were like precious vases, possessing pure precepts, excellent practice, unobstructed clairvoyance, and profound wisdom. The merit accumulated from making offerings to 100 such great disciples is surely immense. Giving food and offerings to 100 ordinary bhikkhus alone already accumulates significant merit, not to mention making offerings to a great bhikkhu like Sariputra. However, the merit is even greater if you contemplate impermanence, even for just an instant. It is quite easy to reflect on impermanence briefly. I encourage you to practice this often, as it is not only foundational, but also accumulates great merit. Even if you have many discursive thoughts, it shouldn't be difficult to think about impermanence for just a moment. You may simply consider, everything is impermanent. There is no one in this world who will not die. I do not know when I will die. You can contemplate this through analysis or meditate on it according to Pith instructions. As long as you persist in practicing impermanence every day, you will perfect your practice. In the past, many eminent masters would perform a session of meditation on impermanence before proceeding to the main practice, just as we practice Guru Yoga before the main practice of each session. In fact, these Pith instructions are very profound, so ensure you pay sufficient attention to them. I am very happy this year due to the positive changes among some Han Chinese Dharma students. In the past, they were not even aware of the most basic principles of Buddhism and had no understanding of which teachings were advanced and which were foundational. Now, many of them may have benefited from the teachings given this time. Of course, all I can do is provide you with teachings and instructions. Whether you practice or not is entirely up to you. I cannot grab each of you and force you to engage in the practice. The Buddha also says, I have shown you the methods that lead to liberation. But you should know that liberation depends upon yourself. Those wise individuals understand that this teaching is precious and hard to attain. Doctrines in Buddhism differ from other worldly truths, beliefs, and knowledge in that both educated and uneducated individuals can embrace the Dharma. Take the words of my perfect teacher, for example. Faithful readers with a bachelor's or a doctoral degree will find the content unassailable, while illiterate listeners will also acknowledge the principle of impermanence. Therefore, I hope each of you will benefit from this study. In particular, you must frequently meditate on impermanence. During the Song dynasty, there was a learned man named Wu Xinso who was a devout Buddhist. Although he held a high position in the imperial court, he was keenly aware of the principle of impermanence, so he never pursued glory or wealth. Wu meditated on impermanence day and night. He had a coffin made for himself, and at night he would sleep in it. His servant was instructed to knock on the coffin every day at dawn and chant, "Wu Xinso, go back now. There is no peace in the three worlds, so don't linger. There is the lotus womb in the Pure Land, so go back now." Hearing this, Wu would immediately rise and begin his recitations. One day, while reciting the name of Buddha Amitabha, his family heard music from the sky. Wu told everyone, "The golden lotus dais has arrived. It's time for me to go." Then he passed away peacefully. Having a coffin at home may be considered inauspicious by worldly people, but for a practitioner, it is an extraordinary way to practice impermanence. Once, Venerable Potawa gave a piece of Tibetan woolen fabric called a pulu to Geshe Ben Kungyo, saying the Geshe's provisions were too shabby and that the pulu could be used to wrap his corpse. If this were said to a worldly person, they would be furious because they prefer to hear blessing words such as, "May you live a long life," or "May you have health and longevity." If someone presents a worldly person with a gift and says, "This gift is for wrapping your corpse," the person would undoubtedly kick the gift giver out of their house. We practitioners, however, should follow the Kadampa's pith instruction to practice impermanence. If we can do so, then regardless of whether we can verbally express the principle of impermanence, we won't fear suffering such as birth, old age, sickness, and death, as worldly people typically do.